Hello everyone, welcome to another Unreal 5 tutorial, and this time I will go over how to make the chaos destruction work with the sequencer. And I will also be going through some of the basics and tips and tricks as to how you can use the chaos destruction as well. Okay, without further ado, here is the example that I quickly made for this tutorial. And as you can see, there's a blue cube over here, and that's the destruction mesh that I have, and a white sphere that will go crash into the blue sphere and make it explode. So if I play through the sequencer, you can see that the cube will burst apart as the sphere crashes into it. And I'm able to play back the destruction simulation in the sequencer. That's because I utilized something called the Chaos Cache Manager. And if I press G, I can hide and unhide the icons or gizmos in Unreal. So it'll look like something. It'll look like this little dinosaur icon. So that will be the Chaos Cache Manager. And you can create this by simply clicking on the chaos destruction mesh that you want to use. So in my case, this is cube. And then I'll go to Actor, Chaos, and create Cache Manager. And then it will make that Cache Manager here an outliner and in the viewport. And by default, it will be on record, which when you press play, it will start the recording as the time passes. So you can leave it on as long as you like and then just press on stop and then it'll stop recording, and then you can change it back to static pose. So then after that, just like drag it into the sequencer and then keyframe the time, and then you can like scribble through all these simulation that has been recorded. So I can also like change the keyframes for the recording, so make it like maybe explode at a later time. So which doesn't make sense over here, but yeah, just as an example. So you can control you can control your keyframes like that, and then you can also make the time, squeeze in the time so that it'll go faster. So it'll go a lot faster. Yeah, like that. Or you can make it go slower if you want to as well. So if you already know how to use the chaos destruction but can't find a way to use it in the sequencer, well, that's how you would do it, and that's all you really need to do. And if you are new to the chaos destruction and you want to like see if there are any other new bits of knowledge you can get from this tutorial, feel free to stay around and then continue watching this video. Thank you. Okay, so before we start, we need to enable the plugins for the chaos destruction and the cache manager. So let's go ahead and go into edit and go to plugins, and then you can search for chaos. And then the two main plugins you need to activate is the chaos caching, which enables you to record the simulation and use it in the sequencer. And the chaos editor itself is the destruction tools in Unreal Engine 5. And once you have these two plugins checked, you probably need to restart the engine again. So go ahead and let it restart. Alright, now I'm going to make a new destructible mesh. And the mesh I'll be using is going to be the same blue cube over here. And this blue cube is from the first-person shooter example that Unreal provided for people to use. And it will be in the level prototyping mesh and this blue chamfer cube. So I'm going to drag this in, and then I'm just going to scale it up a bit more so you can see it properly. Okay. So in order to make a destructible mesh, you are going to have to first go to the select mode over here on the top left corner of the Unreal Engine, and then click on it, and there's a fracture over here. So just click on that, and then it'll prompt up this fracture tab over here for you to make the destructible mesh. And your layout might be a bit different depending on your workspace. Just be sure that you will know where to find it. To make the destructible mesh, make sure you have the mesh that you want it to be destructible selected, and then just press on new. And then it will prompt up a window for you to save where the destructible mesh will be at. So I'm going to save it at the content folder. And then I'm going to name this as destructible mesh sample, like so, and then click on create geometry, and then you'll see that the mesh will be highlighted into this yellow highlight. And then in the content, I can see that this is created in my contents folder. Okay, now if we go to the fracture tab over here, this is mainly what we're going to use for our fractures. And there are different types of fractures you can use: uniform, cluster, radial, planar, slice, brick, mesh, and custom. So for uniform, it'll break into pieces that are roughly the same size. So you can see that the sizes are kind of more or less mostly the same, with a few, maybe like a few little smaller pieces. And if you're not happy with how it was generated, you can click on it again to make it regenerate another kind of a fracture. So you can do that as many times as you want. So there's that. And for clusters, cluster is more of a mixture of big and small chunks. So you can see a lot more smaller chunks within this fracture, and then there's like bigger chunks as well. So if you prefer a more mixture of small and big chunks, then you can use cluster instead. And then there's radial. Radial is mostly like if you want to use like a bullet hole kind of fracture, or like a breaking glass, you could use this as your fracture. And again, you can also like rotate it to which angle you want, and then move it around and probably like scale it. No, actually, no, I don't think you can scale it. You have to scale it from the radius value over here. So if you want it bigger, then you can scale it from over here, and then change the settings over here as well. So there's that. And then planar. Planar pretty much uses a single plane to control the slice of the mesh. So if you would like to have like a sword slicing through a mesh and then have it a clean cut, you could use this. And once you press the fracture, it will do a clean cut of this angle that you see from the planar. And then there's a slice. Slice is pretty much a more hardcore version of planar, where you have a bunch of more slices that you can use. So you can change the different amounts of slice over here. And yeah, you can pretty much use it in XYZ value and then just like slice up in however angle you want it to slice. And I don't know how often you will use this, and I'm not too sure like when exactly you will want to use this as well. So I don't think I'll be using this much anyways. Then there's brick. Brick pretty much makes fractures look like bricks. So if you want a brick wall to like fracture, you can use this as well. And then there's also mesh, which I'm not too sure what it is. I haven't used it before, and I don't really know how to use it. So I'm going to just leave it as that. And then there's custom, which you can probably just customize your fractures and however you want, which I never used it as well. So I can't really tell you like how to use it. I pretty much just used uniform, cluster, and I haven't really used radial before as well. So yeah, so these are the basics of how you can make your fractures. So for the purpose of the example, I'm just going to use uniform for my fracture. And all you need to change the values from the uniform is the minimax over here, the minimax Voronoi. Yeah, I think that's how you pronounce it, Voronoi. And this basically is the minimax amount of fractures that you can get. So if I do like 2 for min and 2 at max, then it will only generate 2 pieces. And if I do like 2 and 5, it will generate in between either 2 or 5 pieces. So if I can click on it, so you can see that there's 3 pieces now. And if I click on this now, there's like 5 pieces. So it'll just like randomize between 2 and 5. So there's that. But for this tutorial, I'm just going to make it 30 and 30, like so. And once you're happy with the fracture, all you need to do is to press on fracture. And then there's also like another note. There's also noise where you can change the change the fracture up a bit if you want to. So there's an option to do that. But once you are happy with the fracture, just click on fracture, and it'll fracture out the destructible mesh, and you can see that you can do explode to like see how it will like explode and fracture apart. Also, another thing about chaos destruction is that you could also click on whichever pieces within the fracture and fracture that in another level. So let's say I think that this chunk is a bit too big, I want to fracture it a bit more. You could click on it, and then it'll show you a preview of the another layer of fracture, and then if you click on fracture again, it'll do another layer of fracture, like so. So I think this is pretty powerful, and it enables you to have multiple layers of fractures if you so choose. And just keep in mind to not go too crazy about it, because it will take some processing power from your computer. Okay, so I'm gonna change this explode amount back to 0. And now let's go on to the next step, which is to see how it will fracture in game, and then how we can put it in the sequencer as well. Okay, so now once you have it all set up, let's just go back to the select mode over here. And then you'll see that the fracture coloring is still there. So how do we turn this off? So basically we just need to select our destructible mesh, and then scroll down the details. In the general tab, you'll see the show bone colors. You can just turn that off, and then it'll be turned off, and it'll be back to its normal textures. Now, if I simply play this, you can see that the cube would just drop and then start fracturing on its own. So that is not what we really want when we start simulating the destructible mesh. So how do we make it so that when we start that it will stay in place and then not fracture? We can do this by going to the object type over here and then change that into sleeping. By switching the type into sleeping, it will allow the simulation to only activate when something triggers it. For the next step, let's do something like the example over here, make a sphere to crash into the destructible mesh. So first I'm going to make a new sequencer by pressing right click, animation, and go to level sequence. And I'm just gonna name it as destruction sample. Oh, I already have that name, so let's make it destruction sequence. There you go. Double click into it, and then I'm going to duplicate the sphere, and then have this in the sequencer, and then I'm going to drag this over here, and then do a simple animation where the sphere will crash into this cube over here. So I'm going to key this over here, and then probably at like frame 8, I'll have it crash into the the cube. So a very simple animation like that. And if I play this game to simulate, you can see that the sphere will crash into this cube, and then it will explode out into the distance, which is probably not what we want, because it seems like the animation is applying a massive amount of force into the destructible mesh, so you probably don't want that. So let's stop the game, and then one way to solve it is we can reanimate the sphere in a way where we can somewhat control the fracture. So I'm going to change the keyframes here a bit. So from the beginning, I'm going to stretch out the keyframe a bit more, and then have it maybe briefly just touch the sphere over here. So we can use this way to test out what kind of fracture you want. So if I play this again and then play through the animation, you can see that the force applied to the cube is a lot less than before. So that's one way of simulating and adjusting the way of how you want the fracture to look like. And you can do a more in-depth in-depth animation too. Let's say I want this to touch a bit, and then add a few more frames. I want to burst out a bit more. So I can do this in a quick succession and keyframe that. And if I try playing this again and then seeing how the fracture will go. Yeah, so at the end we can see a better, bigger burst over here. And I can just record this later on and then adjust the timing of the burst as well. So you can do this as a way to control your simulation. So there's that. There's another way to make a fracture, and that's by using the master field, which I have used in my example. So if I press on G to show my icons, you can see that there's a master field over here that I used. And in order to call this, first we will need to go to the content folder, and then it's going to be the engine. So if you have the engines enabled, pretty much you can just go to settings, and then show engine content. Yep. And then within this all folder, you can search for FS for force field, I think. And then you can see that there is FS anchor field generic, FS master field, and FS sleep disable generic. What we're going to use is this master field, and anchor field I can quickly go over what this is, and for the sleep disable I never used it before, so I can't really say anything as to that. So first let me drag in the anchor and the new master field into here first, and let me quickly go over the anchor field first. So what exactly is an anchor field? It's a field which it will keep the destructible mesh intact at the beginning when the game starts. So if your mesh is at a dynamic state, it will keep the destructible mesh intact and not break apart when you start playing the game. And allow me to demonstrate this quickly. First I will just go put it in underneath the destructible mesh, and then I'm going to scale this thing up and then push it up so that the bottom of the cube will be intact. Get around like this. Okay, so if you start by playing this, let me change this into the dynamic first. Alright, if you start by playing this, you will see that it doesn't work yet. So there's something else that we need to do in order for it to have it stay in a position where it does not drop and break apart. So within the destructible mesh that you want to use, we can go to the initialize field over here from the chaos physics, and then press the add icon, and then it'll prompt the index, right? So and then we just need to pick the anchor field over here. So just click on the eyedropper icon here, and then click on the anchor field, and that should work. So if you press on play, it will stay intact in the same position over here. So another problem is when you use this, you can't really use the sequencer to like push the destructible mesh anymore. So if I scroll through this, you can see that it's not working anymore, and I am not too sure why the developers decided to do that. Maybe it's a bug, maybe they'll fix it in the future, so I don't know. But that's just to say, just to keep in mind if you use the anchor field instead of using the sleep mode for the object type. So it will not work. And if you do decide to use anchor field, that's okay, and that is what the master field is for. Alright, so for the master field, basically a master field is a simple force that allows the destructible mesh to be fractured in every single direction, or in the direction that you so choose. So if I come over here and scale this up a bit, you can see that there's a arrow icon here that points to every direction within the sphere. So all you need to do is you pretty much need to put this field inside, put the destructible mesh that you want to use inside the field the master field that you want to use, like so. And if I simply play the game right now, you can see that it will explode over a period of time. And by default, that is because the field there's a delay in the default tab. There's a delay amount of 1 second over here. So as soon as you play the game, it will take 1 second before this field will be activated and it will explode out. You can change this delay time to however you want. I'm just gonna make it 0.2, to make it like so you can see the explosion a bit faster than having a 1 second delay. And also, if you want to change the shape of the field, you can do so in the fall shape over here. So there's sphere, box, and plane, which you can adjust to however you want it pertaining to what you need. So there's that. I'm just going to keep it as sphere for now. So how do we control the explosion amount of the fractures? One way you could do it, you could use it by scaling. So if I do a small scale like this, it will fracture. The force wouldn't be as great. So it'll look something like that if I have it scaled at a very small scale. But if I were to increase the scale by a lot, like maybe to like this, then you can see the explosion is larger than when you have it scale small, right? So yeah, so there's that one way to control it, but I don't really recommend doing that because if you wanted to have explode out really big, then you may have to like scale it up really big, so which is not what you really want to do. So the other way to do it is by changing the magnitude of the force. So if you see in the field settings in the details panel, there's a place where there's applied linear and angular velocity. By default, only the radar vector will be turned on, which is the which will allow the force to go out in 360 degrees, so everywhere. And you can change the magnitude, but over here by the radial magnitude, and if you change it to like really high, then of course it will burst really far out. Yeah, like that. And I'm going to go ahead and delete this first, so because I don't really need to use it. Yeah, and then I'm going to delete that as well, so there's no because I don't need to use it anymore. Alright, so where was I? Okay, so there's the radial magnitude that you can do. I'm going to change it back to 1000. And there's also directional vector you can use as well. You can both use it at the same time, or you can use it at one at a time. So directional vector is pretty much, it gives a direction of where the force you want it to go. So if I have the force pointing up, and I have it checked open, if I play it, it will burst up. And if I do it like to the left over here, it will burst to that direction. So it comes in handy on how you want to, which direction you want the burst to be at. And you can also have it both open, so something like this. Yeah, so you can have it work at the same time to fit your needs of the explosions that you wanted to use. And as to all these other settings, I haven't really touched them before. And if you want to play around with these, feel free to do so and see what kind of explosions or fractures you can get. I think most of the time you would just need to change the magnitudes of the radar directional and changing the angle of direction. You could probably also do something with the noise and the torque, but I haven't found a need to use that yet, so there's that. Okay, so let's say I'm happy with the current fracture that I have, and I want to use it in the sequencer. Well, what do? Well, first we can click on the destructible mesh over here, and then just go to actor and then chaos, and then create the cache manager over here. And also, if you want to use like more than one destructible mesh at the same time, all you need to do is click on the destructible mesh. Both of the, like, let's say I want these two to be played at the same time, then I'll just select both of these, and then I'll go to actor, chaos, and go to the create cache manager over here. But for now, I'm just gonna do this one because I already have that one in the cache manager. So I'm gonna do this, actor, chaos, create cache manager, and then it'll prompt up a save asset window. And then same thing, I'm just gonna save it in this content folder over here. So I'll call this as destruction sample. Cache. All right, and should be there in the content folder over here. Yeah. So what it will make this. It'll make the destruction, the chaos manager, cache manager into the outliner, and right here with this dinosaur icon on it. And as I said in the beginning of the video, by default it will be in a record mode, which it will record the simulation once you press on play. So if I am to do that right now, I'll just let it run like so, and you can keep it as long as you want, and it'll just keep on recording till whenever you're happy with it. So I'm going to stop right now, and then by going back to cache mode and go changing this to static post, and if I scrub through the time, I can see that it's exploding like so. Yeah. And oops, I accidentally closed the sequencer. Let me open it again. So now if I want to like key the destruction, I can go to, you can see that if I go to the chaos manager, the start time, you can key it. So if I to key it here, I'll just key it over here. You can see that in the sequencer, the cache manager will be on here now. And the timing is from 0, which is 0 seconds, and then you can change it to, it goes by seconds, so if you do 1, it will be like 1 second. Let's say this sequence is 5 seconds, right? So because 150 divided 30 is 5, so about 5 seconds. So if I go to 150 here, and then if I key the start time as 5 seconds, it will play the whole 5 seconds of the recorded time, like so. Yeah. And if I want to like change the keyframes at all, change the timing of it, I can drag the keyframe around to slow down or speed up the timing of the fracture. Let's put the keyframe here, and if I play this, you can see that the fracture speed is a lot faster than before. Yeah, so that's how you will use the chaos destruction inside the sequencer. I hope this is helpful for everyone, and also if you're new to chaos destruction, I hope that this will help you understand how you could use to make fractures for your games or videos that you want to make. Thank you for watching, and I'll be putting out more videos in the future, so look forward to that. And as always, never stop learning.